running PHP and Perl on IIS6. Now, as much as Microsoft would love you to run ASP.NET and only ASP.NET on IIS6, and they've given you a good reason to do so with all the new whiz-bang features, there will inevitably be a great deal of people who want to run PHP or Perl on their IIS server. The fact is, some people might have a lot invested in PHP or Perl. They might know the language and not want to be bothered with learning how to code ASP.NET, or they just want to be plain difficult. No, I'm just kidding. Now, the good news is that you can certainly run these scripting languages if you want. It just takes a little configuration before you can run these types of scripts. Okay, we'll start with PHP. Now, the first thing that we need to do is download and install PHP on our IIS server. Now, I've gone and done that ahead of time, and I've got the zip file here on my desktop. So I'm going to go to my C drive, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to select a new folder, and I'll just call this one PHP. And now I'll just go back to my desktop and we'll double click on our zip file and open up the directory, and we'll select all the files and we'll just drag them over here into our PHP directory. Okay, now once all these files have been unzipped and copied to our PHP folder, we'll have 8 directories and a whole bunch of files here. Now, the first thing that we need to do is locate the file called php4ts.dll, which we can see here, and we'll right click on that file and we'll select copy. And then we'll copy that file into our Windows System 32 directory. So I'll just right click on there and I'll paste that one in there. Now we'll go back to our PHP directory and we'll locate this file called php.ini-recommended, and we'll simply rename the file to php.ini, and then we'll right click and we'll select cut and we'll paste this one into our Windows directory. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to configure IIS to know about PHP. So we'll go and open our Internet Information Services MMC, and we'll expand our server and we'll right click on our websites and select properties. And now we'll come over here and select the Home Directory tab, and then we'll click on the configuration button. Now, in this window up here, you'll see the ISAPI extensions that we're currently caching on our IIS server. And if we scroll down, we can see that PHP certainly isn't listed in here. So we'll need to add in PHP, so we'll come over here and we'll click on Add. And then we'll need to type in the path to the PHP ISAPI DLL. Now, you can either type it in manually or browse to it, so I'll go and click on Browse, and I'll navigate to my C drive, PHP, the SAPI directory, and then we'll select the fourth file down, which is the php4 isapi.dll, and then we'll choose Open. Now, in our extensions box below, we need to add the file extension that will define PHP files. So we'll type in .php, and we can leave the rest of the defaults down here, and we'll click on OK. Now, the final thing we need to do is to configure a web service extension for PHP, so we'll click on OK and OK again to get rid of these dialog boxes. And we'll come over here to the left-hand side of our MMC and we'll select our web service extensions. And then we'll need to add in a new web service extension. So we'll click on the hyperlink here to add a new web service extension. And the first thing we'll need to do is give our extension a name, and I'll simply just call this one PHP. Now, you can call this anything you want, it's just a descriptive name which we'll see added to our web extensions list. So I just like to call this PHP to make it easy to identify. Now, the next thing we need to do is add in the path to our DLL file, so we'll choose Add, and then we'll choose Browse, and we'll select our php4 isapi.dll file, and then we'll choose Open and OK. Now, at the bottom here, we can set this extension to be allowed, which is what we need to do if we want PHP scripts to run. But if you happen to forget to check this box before you click on OK, that'll result in our PHP web service extension being prohibited from running. So to allow our PHP extension to run, we simply highlight it and then choose Allow. And now we can see the status of our PHP web service extension has changed to allowed, and we can see that visually by this green tick over the icon. Now, we've got one more thing to do before we walk away and consider PHP to be working, and that's to test our handiwork with a quick script. So we'll click on Start, and we'll launch Notepad. So we'll enter in a quick and dirty script, something like this, which is just a print statement telling us that we're running PHP. So we'll choose File, Save As, and then I'll navigate to my C drive, and I'll drop this in my inetpub www root directory. And under my Save As type, I'm just going to choose All Files, and then I'll just give it a name, and I'll call this one index.php, and I'll choose Save. Now alternatively, by the way, rather than choosing this Save As type All Files, you could simply enclose your file name in quotes, and that will make sure that Notepad doesn't add the .txt extension to the file. So we'll choose Save, and now we can simply open up Internet Explorer, and we'll navigate to the path where we have our new PHP file, and this will be under server01, the name of this server, /index.php. And there you can see PHP's working. Okay, so that's PHP, but what about Perl? Well, for a start, if you head over to activestate.com and download the latest build of the Perl MSI file, it will add the required extensions to IIS automatically. So you should be fine, and there's almost nothing left to do. But I'll show you how to do it anyway. So the first thing we'll need to do is install Perl. Now I've already downloaded the latest version of Perl from ActiveState. So I'll just double click on the MSI file, which will start up the installation wizard. So we'll click on Next, and the first thing we need to do is agree with the license terms, so we'll choose Next. Now the default installation directory for Perl is on the C drive under the Perl directory, and I'll just accept those defaults, but you can certainly change that if you wish. Now this is going to do a full installation of Perl itself, as well as the Perl package manager and some sample scripts. So that's all cool, we'll just choose Next. And we can then choose to enable our Perl package manager to send our profile information back to activestate.com if we want. And this is designed to help us keep track of our packages, installs and updates. But I'm just going to leave the defaults and leave the option unchecked here and choose Next. Now here we can see that the Perl installer will by default update the path environment variables so we can launch Perl scripts from a regular command line. Now next we're going to create a Perl file extension association so that Windows can recognize a Perl script by its extension. And finally we can have the Perl installer create the IIS script mappings for Perl and the Perl ISAPI DLL. So I'll leave all of these defaults here and then we'll choose Next. And if everything's okay, we'll choose Install, and then the installation of Perl will begin. Now this will take a few minutes, so I'm going to pause the video here and I'll return once Perl's been installed. Okay, Perl has now been installed on our IIS server, so I'm going to uncheck the box to display the release notes, and then we'll just click Finish. And now what we'll do is we'll go back to our IIS MMC, and if we just refresh our screen here, we can see that the Perl CGI and the Perl ISAPI extensions have been added, but they are both listed as prohibited. So if we attempt to run a Perl script on our IIS server now, we won't be able to. So we need to highlight our Perl CGI extension and then click on Allow. Now before we go off and test to see if Perl's working, we'll need to right click on our websites as we did before and select Properties. And then we'll select the Home Directory tab and the Configuration button as we did before. Now under our application extension window, if we scroll down, we can see that our Perl installer did add a .pl extension and a .plx extension. So if you run into any problems when you test Perl, just make sure that these two are here and that they point to the correct paths that you see written here. Okay, so let's go back to Notepad and we'll enter in a few lines for a sample Perl script. Now the first thing we'll add in our Perl script is the path to the Perl interpreter. Now on a Windows system this is actually optional as the path to Perl's been set anyway, but for completeness we'll add it in. So the first thing we add in here is a sharp character or a hash or a pound depending on which country you come from, followed by an exclamation mark. And this is known in Perl circles as the shebang line. And then of course we'll add in the path to Perl, which you can see here is on our C drive under Perl bin perl.exe. The next line we need to add in is our content type line. And finally we'll just enter in the most basic of Perl scripts, just a print statement telling us that this is Perl. Okay, so we'll save this file, we'll click on File, Save As, again we'll just choose All Files, and we'll save this one with an extension of .pl. Alright, so now we can test Perl on our IIS server, so let's go back to Internet Explorer and we'll just change our URL to point to our index.pl file and we'll hit enter. And now we can see that our Perl file ran successfully. So in this video we've demonstrated how to install and configure both PHP and Perl on a Windows 2003 IIS server. Both PHP and Perl are extremely popular on the web today, and as you've seen, there's absolutely no reason why you can't take advantage of the great new features and stability of IIS6 and continue to use your favorite scripting language.